Tony Dungy got nominated, Sports Emmy, for his work on Football Night in America. Congrats, Tone.
Thank you, Dan, and congrats to you, too. It is an honor. The more I'm finding out about this business, definitely an honor just to be nominated.
It is. It is. It's a great group of people. It's tough to win those statues. Really is. It's like winning a Super Bowl.
Yes, yeah. And people say, oh, you only won one. Well, one can be enough sometimes.
All right, we were just talking about Brian Urlacher. Football decision from the Bears' perspective and Brian Urlacher. Give me both sides here.
I think what the Bears are trying to do is say, do we want to really just move on? We had the Lovie Smith era, and Brian Urlacher was a big part of that. Now the Lovie Smith era is over. Do we continue on with that? Do we still build the defense around him, or do we just move on? And I think it's more moving on than it was finances. I'm sure they could have worked the finances out if they really wanted him. So in my mind, it's like, okay, Brian's still a good player, but he was just perfect for this system. We may not be in this system. Let's start from scratch and move forward.
He's a linebacker in a 4-3, so if I'm looking at teams, Dallas, Vikings, maybe Arizona has been mentioned. Can you see Urlacher playing for another team?
I could, and I know he wants to play. I could see it happening in Minnesota. Definitely could. They run a very, very similar system. He would be great there. He knows the division. He'd be like Peyton Manning in that standpoint. Hey, I don't have to re-prepare. I know Green Bay. I know Chicago very well. I know Detroit. So that Minnesota might be ideal for him. I don't know what their money situation is. I know they just got Greg Jennings, but he could be a big help to him.
Urlacher, first ballot Hall of Famer?
The Hall of Fame, it's hard to say. There's so many guys that can go in. I think he's played very, very well. I think he'll be in. I don't know that he'll be first ballot, but I definitely think he'll be in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he's going to be compared with Ray Lewis, and I think also people look at Mike Singletary playing the same position in the same town. Michael.
And to me, that's it, Dan. Not to cut you off, but were you the dominant player in your era at your position? And if you are, then you're definitely first ballot. I don't think you could say that about Urlacher. Ray Lewis was the dominant player in this era at that position. But he's certainly very, very good and should definitely be in there.
If you're a Packer fan, how do you feel? You're already not sure about Brett Favre going to play for the Vikings, but then reportedly was giving advice to Greg Jennings about leaving Green Bay to go to Minnesota. And here they were, maybe an olive branch there. It looked like Favre was going to be brought back and they were going to retire his jersey. He's getting along with Aaron Rodgers. Then he helps Greg Jennings go to Minnesota.
Oh, Brett is something. And but that's the way he is. He's going to give his opinion. He's going to be himself. And I'm sure he and Greg talked about, what's best for Greg. And it doesn't sound great, but it is what it is in this day and age. Unfortunately, you hate to see it. You always want to see your star players stay where they are, but it's just not happening anymore. Ed Reed going to Houston. I never thought I would see that happen, but that's the day and age we live in.
Talking to Tony Dungy from Football Night in America, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. If you were going to vote on the Crown Rule, how would you have voted?
I would probably have done what everybody else did and vote yes for the sake of player safety and that we could all be on the same page for that. I have some serious reservations. I don't know how you call it. I've seen enough. You and I, and Rodney, we sit in the viewing room and we look every week and we see plays in the secondary and you say, that guy didn't mean to lead with his head. He did everything right. He barely grazed a guy's face mask. The receiver ducked and he hit him. Well, now you're going to have the same thing. The running back, Adrian Peterson, turns the corner. He wants to stay in bounds. He puts his shoulder and head down. Did he really lead with his head? Did he strike the guy? I just think there's going to be so much judgment. It's not going to be called very much. And the one time it is called, it's going to be a critical situation that turns the game around. That's what I'm afraid of.
I'm just trying to figure out, is this – but this affects everybody. It's not just a running back. A wide receiver can lead with the crown of his helmet. A defensive player can do that. A punt returner can do that, right? This isn't just outside the tackle box. It's everybody.
it sounds to me, and I don't know exactly, but it sounds to me like the spearing rule that they've had in for years on a tackler hitting with the crown of his helmet now applies to everybody in the game. That no matter what you're doing, if you lead with the crown of your helmet, it's a penalty. And so, we'll see. And most people don't intentionally lead with the crown of their helmet. The safety, protecting yourself is important. So it doesn't happen that often. It's more accidental than intentional, and that's going to be my problem with it. That accidentally, guys going to be flying around and get off balance, and he led with the crown of his helmet, and you're going to get a 15-yard penalty where people say, "Gee, that shouldn't be a penalty," and that's what you hate to see.
The game is tough enough to officiate. Now we've added something else in there. Now, you don't have to factor in intent because you're just saying, look, whether you tried to or not, you led with the crown of your helmet if you were tackling somebody or you were running with the football. Why is it okay in between the tackles? And how far does that line stretch down the field? Is it, if I go 7 yards through in the tackle box, I'm still in the tackle box technically, but I'm now in the secondary. So I think the tackle box, the way the officials always refer to it, is right near the line of scrimmage, 2 yards either way. So I think what they're saying is in line play, where you really can't avoid it sometimes, you can only come off and you don't know what you're hitting with initially, that it's going to be okay. But once you get away from the offensive and defensive lines, if you lead with the crown of your helmet, it's going to be a penalty. Well, let's say
And I think it's going to be hard to call. I really do.
What about a blocking fullback who puts his head down? I mean, he's not a ball carrier. Is he allowed to lead with his helmet to block?
I think only on lead plays, right in the center of the line. The fullback leads up between the center and guard and hits the middle linebacker right on the line of scrimmage. I think it's allowed from the way I interpret the rule. But now that's the gray area. He does the same thing, and the linebacker's 3 yards deep. Is that a penalty now? Those are the things that I know the coaches brought up when this was discussed, and everybody said, well, it's for safety. It's not going to be called very much, so don't worry about it. And that's true. We're all for safety. But, again, just like the Tuck rule went in, everybody thought that was a good rule. That was going to make it easier. And you have one play that stands out over the 15 years we had it. And, it didn't get called very much. But it did cost the Raiders a shot at the Super Bowl.
I've been called a conspiracy theorist many times, and rightfully so. And let me offer up my latest example. John Harbaugh beats Jim Harbaugh in the Super Bowl. He feels bad about it. Feels good he won, but feels bad. So all of a sudden, they can't sign Anquan Bolden. So you're going to say, let's take offers from other teams here. Since we can't sign him, we can trade him. All of a sudden, in a 30-minute window, you call your brother, and he gives you a 6th-round draft pick, and all of a sudden, Anquan Bolden's playing for the Niners. That's insider trading, isn't it, Tony?
Well, if John Harbaugh was controlling it all, it may have been. But I know Ozzie Newsome pretty well. And a matter of fact, I talked to someone who Ozzie Newsome was talking to about the trade. And Ozzie says, hey, I don't work for the 49ers. My allegiance is to our team. We were going to get the most that we could get.
Wait a minute. A 6th-round pick is all you could get for Anquan Bolden.
Do
you believe
I have
that?
To believe Mr. Newsom. I do. Yes.
All right. So the Harbaugh. So maybe Jim Harbaugh gave more than what the Ravens were going to get someplace else. Maybe that was the case.
That's what it sounded like from Ozzie Newsom's perspective. Yeah, he was trying to get what he could get, and
man,
that was it.
hey, good to visit with you. Congrats again on the nomination there, Tone.
Thank you, Dan. Always fun. I can't wait to get back to work.
I'm fired up too. Thank you, bud.
All right, we'll see you.
Tony Dungy, Football Night in America. Your phone calls next, 15 before the hour. Dan Patrick Show.